The historic San Jose Produce Terminal, also known as the Growers Market, located at 7th and Taylor Streets, founded in the midst of the Depression in 1932, is an amazing piece of San Jose history. It was established as the Santa Clara County Vegetable, Berry, and Fruit Growers Association, a cooperative amongst primarily Italian and Japanese American truck farmers and agriculturists, as a way to get their produce to distribution points throughout the Bay Area. This immigrant-based produce market rapidly became a community institution that employed hundreds of people in the Santa Clara Valley and was a bustling agricultural hub industry for over 50 years. The terminal market spawned another San Jose institution, Beanie's Bar and Grill, located on the market property. It not only served the needs of the market and local cannery workers, but became a favorite eatery for many in the community. Several prominent Italian-American families who reside still in the valley trace their roots to this amazing economic engine. In addition to the Great Depression, the market survived other hard times, especially during World War II, with the internment of Japanese Americans and restrictions on Italian Americans. The early expansion of the Bayshore Freeway, Highway 101, through San Jose divided much of the original farming community and put an end to the flourishing truck gardens in the area. This video wishes to acknowledge the vibrancy of San Jose's agricultural past and is dedicated to its immigrant roots, primarily amongst the Italian and Japanese American farming families of the once described Valley of Heart's Delight.
I was going to talk about it.
It's called It Happens Every Morning. And it's on the San Francisco, but they do bring in San Jose. And it's written by Milani, Robert Milani. He was Sunset Produce. And
San Francisco.
yeah, San Francisco.
Yeah.
And there's 3 markets that way. You have San Francisco, South City, and then Oakland. But if you can get a copy of that book, I have one. They're hard to find, but it's very.
Got it. I
Did you
got
have
it.
it, print?
I got it on Amazon.
Was yours signed from somebody?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, without further ado, then get up and I'm
Okay.
going to monitor the room here. And
Okay.
also, we're going to tape your input. Dave will be doing that, and hopefully we'll get this on YouTube.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Good afternoon. My name is Joanne Ghiggeri Bjornstad. I'm a member here of the Italian American Heritage, as well as a past board member. I grew up on a farm, a farmer's daughter, where there was once green, fertile farm fields and orchards here in the Santa Clara Valley, the Valley of Heart's Delight, an era that is no more. My dad, Andrew Ghiggeri, was an early farmer, here starting in the early 1920s until his death in 1980. He was a truck farmer, selling his produce beginning on Market Street in between St. John and St. James, curbside, and then moving to the Growers Market in 1932. Before I continue, I would like to thank Ken Borelli, our cultural director here at the Heritage, for all he has done on the Growers Market project, securing grants, talking with city officials, and being such an encouragement to continue onward with this project. This is our final goal, is to have a history marker on 7th and Taylor Street. He inspired me personally. I enjoyed learning about this part of my dad's life that I had no idea about, and all the interesting people that I've met. It really has been a labor of love. So thanks, Ken, and remember, it's all about the pesto.
Okay. Without the garlic.
Okay, I would also like to thank all the participants today. Maybe they'll stand. Chuck, you want to stand? It's going to be...
I can make it up.
Chuck is going to be speaking today, as well as Jan, Marianelli, Stumhoffer, and Sharon Moreali and Tony Moreali. they, like myself, had fathers and family members who actually worked on the market, and who will be sharing their experiences, memories with all of you today. So thanks again for being here. I'm going to start by giving a brief history of the growers market following a date line. The produce market started in 1932 and was named the growers market. Before this, in the early 1920s, the farmers were selling their produce off trucks, going to neighborhoods, local grocery stores, as well as curbside on market between St. John and St. James. This is really where the farmers were selling their produce to a large extent. Then a city ordinance passed, and they were no longer able to park or to actually use that area any longer. And I remember my dad saying that he could no longer sell his produce there, so it was close to them. So what goes on after this is shortly after, a group of Italian-American farmers got together and formed the Santa Clara County Vegetable, Berry, Fruit Growers Association. And I even have here a little, it was a statement from my dad for his stall. And it says right there, Santa Clara County Vegetable, Berry, Fruit Growers Association. Evidently the stalls were like, and this is in 1978, the stalls were like $50. And I think my dad had 3 because he had the cold storage, and then I think he had 2 on either side, right?
Yeah, he had 2.
Yeah. Okay. After this, the corporation, shortly after came, kind of off the track here, this corporation was actually funded by $50 a share from all of the local farmers, and only a maximum of 10 shares, as they didn't want anyone to have more control. It was considered a co-op. So think about this for a second. We're in the Depression, and these farmers have to come up with $50 a share. That's a lot of money during the Depression. But somehow they did, and they were able to secure a property on the corner of 7th and Taylor Street for selling their produce. And now it's called Growers Market. And if you look, you can see some of these early pictures, and we'll go over some of that again. So now we're talking about 1932. The first elected board of directors was Silvio Dimite, Archimede Antichi, Nazareno Tassi, Joe Marianelli, and Joe Montefarina. And there's a picture of them right here. See that first Growers Market board. My dad, along with other farmers, were the original stockholders listed on that sheet that I passed around. You can see many Italian names. There were not just Italian names, but there were Japanese Americans, Armenians, and other ethnicities. This market continued through and survived the Great Depression, World War II, and then flourished during the 50s through the 70s to the early 80s. Until the emergence of the big supermarkets, and I think I have a label there showing how the supermarkets came in. What happened not only with the supermarkets, but there were skyrocketing land values and the loss of the need for a produce terminal, basically. So the economics just didn't work anymore.
Can I intervene there?
Sure.
Actually, it wasn't. What it was Mike Bonfani, was one of the biggest buyers
Right, my
there.
dad, yeah.
And he went central warehousing.
So that really
It stopped the buyers from coming in. I mean, we still had them, but since he went and he was a big chain, everybody was trying to follow suit. But, I mean, so it wasn't so much that, like you said, it was because of people wanted, they just, they were moving out of the market.
Right. It was dwindling down, basically. Okay, good point. Thank you, Tony. This produce market, I just want to go on to say that this produce market represented the best of the Valley of Heart's Delight for over 66 years. A lot of produce was transported all over the United States, not just in California, but with the help of the adjacent train transportation and local truck transportation as well. I know Ficino's trucking was there, and there were a lot of different trucking. Okay, so now we're going to go to 1981. American brothers, the produce brokers, Aram and Andy, there were 2 brothers, they bought the wholesale market and renamed it the San Jose Produce Terminal. Now we're on to
1996.
the San Jose Produce Terminal became a San Jose farmers market for about 2 years. There was a lot of advertisement to try and reinvent the terminal into a retail farmers market by Charles Ghiggeri, who was Andy Amarion's stepson, but it was unsuccessful. This actually, what we passed around was an advertisement in the Mercury News, and this is the list of all of the original stockholders. So it's really interesting, and as I said, not just Italians, but there were many many Japanese as well as Armenians. There are a few Armenians and Slavics as well. So he also, not only did he have this list, but he also put out a book about the farmers market. So I got this from Rich Cherini. He let me copy it. So it got a little beat up at the Festa, but anyway, this is what they were doing to advertise the San Jose Farmers Market. Well, as I said, it wasn't successful. It only lasted 2 years.
In direct competition to us.
Oh,
Yeah.
did he?
Oh, really?
I mean,
2 years.
you know, because Beanies had been there, and
Sure.
we were doing the business association, and we'd had our market since the 80s.
So you had your
just a
market
local
actually
market.
before. So he was,
Oh, way before.
so he was
And
kind
then-
of competing.
And then he moved in and did any of it.
No.
Yeah. Well, there's stories about him, and we won't go there.
No, we won't.
Okay.
Remember, this is.
I was told, yeah.
That's okay, we're
That's
Italian.
okay, we're Italian.
Whatever.
I just said stories, right? I didn't say anything bad. I just said there are different stories. There's lots of stories about my dad, too, good and bad. Right, Tony?
He knows where we live.
Okay, so we'll go on our timeline. So in 1998, Beanie's, the adjacent famous restaurant that welcomed the farmers, cannery workers, truck drivers, as well as lawyers, judges, and all different walks of life, moved to 6th Street and then later closed. This was definitely the local Cheers of San Jose. And I have a few pictures here. Jan is going to talk a lot more about Beanie because she has family ties with Beanie. But just to kind of show you, initially it was called Bimbo's. And I'll say a little bit more about that. And this was actually Jan's relative, I believe, Edith Beanie Williams. And then the last owner was Dale Yoshihara. Okay, so that's a little bit about Beanies, and I'll let Jan go on and talk. She's got a great presentation to go on about Beanies. Okay, in 2001, Charles Ghiggeri inherits all of the the terminal, and he sells it off, 6 acres, to a developer for apartments for $6 million. So that was kind of the demise of the market.
Go by there now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Take a ride.
yeah,
kind of sad, huh?
yeah, we thought that.
Yeah, very sad.
They didn't even
Okay.
put a name for it. I mean, they could have made the apartment.
You know,
couldn't.
I talked to the developer because I was the executive director of the Japan Business Association. The guy I talked to was from Arizona. And he's telling, you know, I'm saying, look, the Japantown Business Association and Neighborhood Association had done a long-term study on what kind of housing they wanted. We didn't want gated housing. We didn't want it that dense, you know, and he said, you know, gated. Who wants to live in this neighborhood?
Oh.
And I'm like, I live on 17th and Taylor. You know, this is my neighborhood. Yeah, it was kind of weird.
It's one of the best.
It is.
It is one of the
I used
best.
to be
It's a
there.
beautiful
My
neighborhood.
shop open.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Nobody.
Well, I'm so glad you're here today because you have so much to share with us. Thank
And then,
you.
well,
I appreciate this.
And then the way they designed it, there was supposed to be parking underneath, and they didn't realize they were going to strike water. And
Oh,
so, you know,
Wow.
and there's supposed to be retail, and you notice that the retail still isn't fully developed, and it's been 25 years.
Wow.
So,
Well, they never should have moved beanies out of there.
no, they never should have moved
Never
these out
should
there.
have moved beanies ever.
Well, he eventually went for Japanese.
Oh, I bet.
Now,
Anyway, because that's really, Jan's going to cover that beautifully. Okay, so now I would be demised if I didn't give a little background about my dad. So it's pretty similar, not just because he's my dad, but I'm sure there were a lot of other farmers that were pretty similar to my dad as far as coming to the United States from Italy and their background. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about him. My dad came to the U.S. From Italy in 1911 at the age of 14. and soon was involved in farming with our cousins in Berryessa with my grandfather. Then my dad, a little later, was able to purchase his own farm off Monterey Highway near Kirtner and Little Orchard. That's where I grew up. In the late 20s, my uncle came to the U.S. from Italy and farmed with my dad on my mom's farm together in Brentwood. They were known for their Bantam sweet corn. My uncle came here in 1929, and I have some pictures. Here we go. This is my mom and my dad and my Uncle Emilio and the corn, and you can see all that, and the can you get that? And also the truck getting ready to go to market. Okay, and it's a little bit about showing about them. Now, I would be remiss. I wanted to see what else I wanted to say here. My dad, not only were they known for their corn, which you can see my uncle and my dad had their sweet Bantam sweet corn, which was their kind of prize on the market. You remember that, right, Tony? Great corn. Okay, and let's see here. My dad actually farmed all types of vegetables in San Jose through all seasons. And this is another label of some of the vegetables: carrots, turnips, cabbage, cauliflower, curly cabbage, all kinds of things. And then next, what I wanted to do was tell you, as a young girl, I remember my dad getting up in the morning and leaving at 2 in the morning to be on the market. I also would be remiss if I didn't say a little bit about my mom, who actually every Saturday, that book that you gave me, Tony, the one about the produce market.
Right.
Well, my mom would get up every Saturday and go to Alamany Boulevard which she would sell retail at the San Francisco market there. So not only was my dad selling wholesale during the week, my mom was selling retail. So the produce terminals, the produce was really into our family. I remember the trucks as a little girl being loaded with crops from our farm by our farm workers who lived on our farm. My dad would sell his produce at the market until early morning, then afterward make his way home by lunchtime, stopping to deliver to local grocery stores and restaurants along the way. For 66 years, the produce terminal provided jobs for local truck drivers, orchardists, canneries, fruit processing, as well as seasonal work for many. And including my brother Andy, who would work for my dad in the summer, and I working on the farm, packing tomatoes, squash, and accompanying my mom to the San Francisco Farmers Market on Saturdays on Alamany Boulevard. Today, farming is so different. Today's farming is, my cousins continue the farming legacy started by my dad, my mom, and my uncle under GNS Farms in Brentwood in Southern California.
Go to the Oakland produce market around 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:36,
Yeah.
and that's by Jack London Square. It's like the olden days.
Is it really?
Yes, but again, it's so
So that's
weird.
still vibrant then?
Yeah, but they're building condos in that area
Well, they're
too.
building above, but Oakland is very vibrant. So is San Francisco, and so is South City, across from the airport. Oakland is like what we have
That's
in
right.
the San Jose market because everything's ground level.
Right.
You know, in San Francisco, you have ground level and then where a truck can back in to offload produce.
Right.
Every night produce comes in from every part of the world. I mean, Lufthansa brings in from Italy and Germany, and you can get anything on the produce market today, which you couldn't in our day, but
Yeah.
it was around.
Sure.
But it's very interesting because if you haven't been to the produce market, it is a good trip. And you don't have to go at 6:30, you can actually go at 11 o'clock at night and walk it, you know. You can't buy a pound of this or
No,
pound of that,
no, it's
but what
yeah,
you would
it's
pay for a
wholesale.
pound, you're
Yeah.
getting a case.
Yeah.
So you
Right.
actually learn, you want to have a community of people where you go, I'm going to go to the market, what do you need? I need 12 ears of corn, I need 20, you know, and you buy that way. You still can do that today, but most people just don't.
Okay, thanks, Tony.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good, because you
Well,
know
that's
this
what this is
firsthand.
all about. We
That's
have
why
to
I wanted you
capture
to
this
be here.
information.
But I know the way my cousins do it.
Oh, no, I
You
know,
they got
that's
the,
why
they
I
got the
said.
semi that goes right to the.
That's why I mentioned Safeway, and
Yeah.
then see, they
They
bypass that.
sell the Safeway. Okay. And so I just wanted to say, so here we are from the Valley of Heart's Delight to Silicon Valley in 2021 with all memories of an era gone by as far as our market goes. Okay, so now I just wanted to thank some people who couldn't be here today to share their memories. I wanted to thank Rich Torini, who I was able to interview in the beginning back in 2019. He was one of the last office managers at Grover's Market, so he told me, I don't know Tony, and was related to the Parachi family, who were a big part of the market. His relative, Ottavio Parachi, who started the popular restaurant at the corner of 7th and Taylor, which was known as Bimbo's, which was actually his nickname and later became Beanie's. Rich shared lots of information with me, market memories, and great stories about my father. And then, actually, I got to meet Bill Campbell, and that was through the Carol Nass, who was part of Japantown. She actually owns the Roy's station. We went there, actually. Anyway, so Bill Campbell, who grew up across the street, his family actually owned the Campbell Motel, and then later the Campbell gas station. My husband and I were fortunate to get a tour of his private gas station and car memorabilia. You know about him. He's a great guy. Yeah, he's really great.
I think he's still storing the bar from Beanie's.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he showed us the, yeah. And he provided us with many pictures. A lot of these pictures that you see on the top of the market actually came from Bill. And then I found out that Bill and Rich Torini actually meet for coffee like once a week. So they have a whole thing going on. So it was really cute. And then I'd like to thank, unfortunately Nancy and I couldn't get together and cross bridges here, but Nancy Dimite, whose family has many ties to the market. You know her. She's a sweet person. I believe she still lives close to the market. I thought
She
you said.
also teaches posture fit at UI College.
Okay, there you go. And her family have a lot to share, but we just haven't been able to cross bases to get all that in. And also, I'd like to thank Frank Lo Cicero, who provided pictures about the Blaze brothers right there, who were produce brokers, and then and memories of other connections he had. Actually, these pictures were actually from Frank. And now I would like to read an email from a friend of mine, Gary Landy. And Gary Landy's dad, did you know Gary?
Yes.
His father? Yeah. Gary was my patient. I used to clean his teeth for years.
Dave Landy.
So we used to, so we used to have market chats going on, right? So anyway, he said, I just read a little bit about what he said, because he's talking about a lot of the people on the market. Hi, Joanne. Great to hear from you. I tried to contact someone at Standard Produce, but they were unable to participate for you. The market, of course, was a place in this area to buy wholesale and then distribute it at retail. My dad would buy from his cousins, Henry Parachi and, of course, Dante Parachi, San Jose lettuce distributors. He also bought from Ray Leon at San Jose Potato and Onion, as well as from the Amarian brothers, Aram and Andy. These are the ones I can remember. Besides restaurants, grocery stores, my dad had accounts with a few of the school cafeterias in the San Jose Unified District while I was in high school at San Jose High. I would go to the market, this is kind of cute, I would go to the market before school on Mondays to deliver to them, then go back home and change to go to school. He goes on and tells a little bit more about the market. By the way, my dad was not a broker. He had accounts he would deliver the produce to, personally. I remember him telling me something about Old Beanie's restaurant, having a room downstairs in the basement where some of the people from the market would play poker and gamble at times. To my knowledge, the only person in our family, Archimedes Antiqui, was the only one that owned property, raising any produce that went to the market. I remember him raising tomatoes at the end of 19th Street, adjacent to the 101 freeway. Not related names I remember as farmers who might have sent produce to the growers market were Panettone, Battaglia, and Parachi. My grandmother's maiden name was Parachi, and some of the Parachi people were her cousins. And then he goes on to say, it was so nice of you and the group to try and get a permanent marker at the site. Go for it. So that was pretty cool.
Joanne,
Yeah,
that Landy that wrote to you there.
Gary, yeah.
Was that any relation to Babe Landy?
Yeah, with his
from
son.
B&C Produce?
His son,
Yeah.
the pharmacist.
Oh, okay.
And Babe
I knew
was,
Babe, yeah.
Babe,
Yeah.
they're still around. Galley Produce is B&C, Babe Landy. I mean,
I'm
they
not sure
sold,
Karachi owned that, right?
well, yeah, but they sold it. It was actually Babe's produce.
Tony does
Babe was,
everything.
Babe was a saint.
B&C was Belandi and Camerlindy,
No,
right?
Babe, yeah, Blanding, Carmelindi.
Okay.
Yeah, B&C
Okay.
Farm.
So, anyway, did I say a little bit about the Japanese community? I think I might have skipped that.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Okay, so I just want to say thank them as well. And I spoke with Dale Yoshihara, who was actually the last owner of Beanies. This was back when we were starting this, back in 2019, who also had ties to the market. He owns the Kyoto Palace at the Prune Yard. And as I said, he introduced me to Carol Nass of Roy's Coffee Station in Japantown and Jim Nagarata of the San Jose Japanese American Museum, who were both able to give me information. And I was very grateful for that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my dad's best friend, Sam Uchiyama, who farms strawberries next to our farm. Did you know Sam? Okay, and would sell his strawberries at the market. And the many other Japanese farms in the Berryessa and Almaden area, and their hardships with the relocation camps in World War II, losing their farms, then coming back and having to start over. Moreover, we knew firsthand of these hardships. Sam was a very dear friend of my dad, and he shared all these stories with us. We still hope to find someone from the Japanese American community who will be able to share their market story with us. We've really worked on this, personally on this project, as they were a large part of the market. And now, I wanted to thank Tony Moreali, because I'm glad he's here. And he just already plugged his book, but I was going to plug this book as well. And it happens every morning. It's a chronicle of the produce industry in the Bay Area. And like he was saying, it's mainly San Francisco, Oakland.
It does talk about.
And it does
San
about
Jose.
it's only about 2 or 3 pages. It gives a little blurb about
But it
the
gives you
growers
an
market.
idea.
Right, but it gives you a wonderful idea of the produce market. And if anybody's interested in this, you might want to maybe make a copy of that. So, so anyway, I just wanted to say a couple more things about some pictures. I'm not sure if I think I should. Did I talk a little bit about this picture of my dad and actually Sharon and Tony's dad? They were actually together on the market. I think it's probably the late 40s or maybe 1950. I'm not sure. And my dad is actually selling some turnips, it looks like, or something to Tony. And knowing my dad, he was Genovese. He was probably trying to get the last penny out of your dad.
We can can we pass this
Sure,
around?
of course. And
It's
I
a
gave
precious
Sharon this picture. I actually found that picture through my mom's things in 2009 when she passed. Yeah, it's a great picture.
Well, my dad and your dad were pretty close.
I know.
They played a lot of jokes.
Yeah. They played. My father and your dad like to play a lot of pranks on you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, again, I wanted to thank, and finally, I have to thank my brother Andy, who couldn't be here today, who provided me with lots of insight from all of his working on the market. The last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was this picture, and I think I went on, and I just wanted to say a little about everybody who's in the picture. I told you about my dad and my uncle, and that's my brother and my cousin Roy, who's now head of GNS Farms. But this man right here was my dad's foreman, and his name was Gene Lagomarsino, and he was a very, very dear friend of the family. He had nobody except, I think, a nephew in New York, and he was like my uncle. And my dad and Genovese called him the Capatazzo, and he took care of all of my dad's farm laborers, and he was just a great man. And I wanted to say a little bit about him. And then this man right here is Bruce Galliardo, and he had the orchards next to our orchards, and basically went all the way down Almaden Expressway. And he had 2 other brothers. Did you know them, the Galliardos? Yeah, but they sold most of their stuff to the cannery. and cut costs and everything. They were right next door to us. And then, I wanted to save the best for last. This is Pete Bottali, and I don't know if anybody remembers him, but he had a Kybers painted 1938 vegetable truck. He was a very good friend of my dad, and he was a pretty colorful person on the market and all over San Jose.
No.
If you ever saw his truck, it was incredible. It would be parked in front of Original Joe's or downtown San Jose, and I'm sure Tony has great stories about him. I'm sure he has great stories, but anyway.
He had two of them.
Yeah, and then it broke
Very
down,
colorful.
and that's how
Right there.
Mel LaRusso actually ended up
So
with
in
it,
conclusion,
is because he helped
because
him
we
get
have a lot
another
of speakers
truck.
to talk today, I don't want to take up any more time. But anyway, it was, obviously you can see it became a labor of love. I really learned a lot about my dad and the market, so it was fun and met a lot of cool people. So it was been fun.
Your
But
dad was very colorful.
yeah, so was yours. From what I hear. So in conclusion, this was a glimpse of the contribution of the growers market, primarily involving the Italian and Japanese American, excuse me, I'm not doing well with this mouse, Japanese American immigrant farmers to the pre-Silicon Valley when it was truly the Valley of Heart's Delight. Thank you for letting me share all of this with you. And as I said, I had thank you Ken because it truly was a labor of love that reminded me
Well, you
Brought
know,
back
if
a
you
lot of
think about
memories.
this, it was an economic
that I
engine.
didn't know.
How could you not, can you imagine poor immigrant farmers? They weren't rich in those days.
Coming up with
They
$50.
come up with a co-op in the midst of the Depression,
Yep.
and not only did they sell, they made jobs for other people.
Exactly.
Because
But I
they're-
just- I
This
also
is
wanna
so
be-
powerful.
I don't want to forget
Their
this picture.
theory was.
So anyway, but it has,
Very good, Joe.
oh, thank you. It has the mobile station there where Harold worked, the Parachi brothers, and Marion brothers actually started there and then they
Right.
went back in the corner,
They
right?
took over Central.
Right, okay, and Tony knows more of all this. And then there was a Ferrari, it says here, San Jose Citrus and Produce.
Yep.
Okay,
And Banana King Louie was over there.
I see.
Who was that? That was Baranti, wasn't it?
Banana King Louie.
Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce Chuck Gullo, whose dad was a produce buyer. And he's going to tell us a little bit about the market firsthand because Chuck actually worked there. So it'll be fun to hear a little bit about that.
Here we go. If I miss something, let me know.
Don't worry, I will.
Well, like we start this off, it was all about the farmers when they first got started. And the farmers went there to sell to the wholesalers, to the peddlers meaning the guys that went door to door, blew the horn, the ladies come out and buy whatever they wanted to buy, okay? And then we went from, then the stores, a lot of the stores bought directly from the farmers too, even though they were in competition with the bigger guys in the market, they did that too. Capellonis, Ghiggeri's, bunch of them. But then they went to, then the wholesalers were there too, and of course they were selling the stores. They were selling to the resale wholesalers. Those are guys that they buy the stuff and then they resell it over again. They got their own routes. So there was that bunch in there. And then we had, then a lot of guys, well, not a lot of guys, a few guys, they were specialists. They dealt with like maybe a couple of items and that's all they did. We had three of them there that were potatoes and onions. Ray Leon, Henry Sanfilippo, and there was another guy there that was,
Banana
Joe
King
Bikini.
Louie, all he did
Joe
was-
Bikini,
Joe Bikini cherries.
Bayside.
Yeah, Bayside.
And so, and they made their living by, just specializing in a thing. Then the rest of the guys, they sold everything. We had a couple of guys there that all they sold was bananas.
Yeah.
The
one guy,
Greeks.
Banana
And-
King.
Then we had another guy there who worked for Standard and Blaze Brothers, which is another history thing. And he started his own outfit, Cole Citrus, and all he did was oranges, lemons, grapefruits, that type of thing. That's all he did. And he worked all year round. And then we come to the brokers. There was a lot of those guys around too. I only knew two of them. I knew Ray Costa. You remember Ray? Yeah.
Very well.
And he was kind of, he had something to do with Standard. I don't know exactly what.
Well,
I think he was an owner, wasn't he?
No, he was one of their buyers
Yeah.
as a broker.
Yeah.
But you have to, a broker is what I do now today, but a broker goes out and buys from the farms. You can be a buying broker or just a broker. But you go, and if this guy has cherries and he needs help selling them, then you would deliver them into the market for him. So we only had a couple.
What I remember was is they would go there, let's say a farmer's got like 1,000 cases of lettuce. The
Right.
broker would get that, he'd start making calls, and he might sell that 1,000 to maybe 3 or 4 guys.
Right, that's where a Marion came
Yeah.
in and Standard. They would go to the broker and say,
Yeah.
I need this many cases of lettuce. That broker made sure they made it to market.
I remember years ago, they used to get their commission, the brokers.
Right, they get
off
a
of so
commission.
much a case.
Yes.
But I don't know how they do it now.
Same
But I
way.
mean,
Same way.
Same way.
same way,
Yeah.
so much a case,
Yeah.
okay. So, there's a lot of people that made a living out of this.
It was a city. A produce market is actually a city. You have lumpers, you have brokers, you have,
yeah.
and lumpers
That was
are
a lumper.
who unload the
That's a
truck, and they
rough
make
job.
money
It's
to
a
unload the
horrible
truck. And it's an amazing thing to be involved in. So,
There was no, one thing I noticed in the years I was down there was no cutthroating. Everybody was friends. I mean, not that I knew of.
Well,
I never saw it. Maybe you did, but I never saw it. And
there was
they'd help each other
competition,
out.
Just always competition,
Well, yeah,
you
but it
know.
was friendly competition.
Oh,
It wasn't-
absolutely.
I mean, I remember they used to have a big barbecue. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
those barbecues. And
I
everybody was
remember
there.
the
The
barbecue.
brokers
Well,
were
they
there, the
stopped
peddlers
Caesar
were there,
Chavez, right?
everybody was there. And we had a great time. And there was no dissension. And some of these guys were in the same accounts together. They're competing with each other.
Right.
But there was no bad feelings or anything like that. It was just,
Well, we were a
they
small
helped out
town.
each other.
In
you
those
know?
years.
And
Yeah, we were a small town.
that's what I liked about it. I always thought it was kind of a friendly business, but it was rough. It was a rough business. It was 7 days a week. It was like early in the morning till,
Your hours were 10 o'clock at night until 9 a.m. in the morning.
I wouldn't say it was very conducive to a domestic situation, but they made it, most of those guys were married for 30 or 40 years, so evidently it didn't make any difference. But it's a rough job. I think the only ones that I ever remember that became millionaires on this thing is the farmers that ended up selling their property, and then they put buildings there or whatever. Then they became millionaires. They never made millionaires being a farmer.
No, that's true.
And-
But they were very happy, and
But they had.
they had it. I'm sure you heard it every night, because I heard it every night. People have to eat. So it was a great business to be in. And you gotta have shoes. So, I mean, I would hear that all the time.
We ate everything.
You know,
We
you,
ate
Well, we had everything
Yeah.
fresh because it was
Yeah.
right off the farm.
Yeah.
And I still, to this day,
Yeah.
that's the way I cook.
yep.
Yeah.
Because everything was, and I still have a garden because it meant a lot to me. Yeah.
I just want to say, the time I spent down there, I knew Tony's father, and I knew Joanne's father, and many, many other guys that are long past us now. But they were all good guys. My father always used to say, I sent you to all these schools and everything else, and I said, Pop, the best lesson was right there in that market.
I bet it was.
I'm going to classes,
My
listening to
brother
them about
said that
accounting
too.
and all this other stuff, and what I knew about it from the market over there. They showed me
You
how to do
learned a
it.
lot. You learned a
Yeah,
lot.
you learned what your first name
So
was after. a
that's
couple
my
of weeks.
contribution to this, and I want to thank you for asking me,
Oh, of course.
and it's good seeing you again. All right.
Thank you,
Take care.
Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, we're going to have Jan, Marianelli, Stumhoffer.
Stumhoffer.
It's okay.
It's a lesson to just keep your maiden name.
That's all right, everybody butchers Bjornstad, so anyway, I'm sorry about that, Jan. But anyway, she's gonna talk a little bit about her family who is in farming as well as beanies. So your turn, Jan.
Okay. Okay. Glad to be here, everyone. The market and my family's history in farming has always been dear to my heart. So, my grandfather and his father came to this valley in the early 1900s from the Umbria district of Italy. My great-grandfather's brother was already here. And over time, those great uncles, other brother came. So there were, for me, 3 great uncles here. And then my grandfather and the family that he had over time. So Carlo Marianelli, my great-grandfather, his brother Luigi, and my grandfather Dominic started farming. Dominic had 3 sons. Carlo had 3 sons, Dominic, Peter, and Pete, all Marianellis. And they started farming under this label, Marianelli Brothers. And they were row crop farmers here for over 50 years in the valley. And they had a home ranch on what is now 21st Street, kind of north of Taylor, going up past Mission to where the freeway is, but it went all the way east to Coyote Creek. But then Highway 101 came in and divided that home ranch. It was a 3-lane road with the middle lane being where you could turn and stuff. So my grandfather used to shoot across it with his tractor to try to continue to take care of the crops that were on the east side. And over time that became impossible, so they had to give that up. But on that side, they grew radishes, beets, turnips, things that grew well by the creek side. And in general, they grew a variety of lettuce, red, romaine, butter, iceberg. They grew escarole, green beans, corn, tomatoes, radishes, beets, turnips, zucchini. Then later in life, my dad and his brother-in-law started Marianelli Farms. So as I share a little bit more about my grandfather and his children, his father had Joe, Pete, and Dominic for sons. They had Palmyra as a daughter who married a Capelloni, and they had Katera as the other daughter who married a Rosati. Her first child was Edith, and in time she became a Beanie. So there's all this interrelationship. The home ranch was large. There was over time an office. There was a huge refrigeration unit. There were sheds and barns for tractors and trucks, and a huge barn where they washed vegetables and prepped them for selling. My grandfather, he would go to market, and they had ranches on Kiefer Road. They had the main ranch on 21st. They had over time a ranch on what was to become White Road.
Can I share?
Yeah, and then later in life, my dad and my uncle leased the property from Mrs. Overfelt that became in the future the site for Alexian Brothers Hospital. When my dad was young, he would help my grandfather go to market, and he'd get up at 2 in the morning in high school, and he'd be late for class. Or sometimes he wouldn't go to class. And the principal called him in and wanted to know, Carl, why aren't you coming to school? And he said, well, I have to help my dad go to the market. And she said, well, we'll fix that. Your first period's going to become a study period. You get here on time. So he did that. my dad, when he was working the Alexian Brothers, what became the Alexian Brothers land, there before the hospital was there, there was this Rancho Verde golf course. And we were kids then. And they, the golfers would hit golf balls into the property, and my cousins and my sister and I would go through the property, scarf up all the golf balls, and go to this little crisscross fence and sell them back to the golfers. And then my yeah, we were pretty good. And then my sister and I, we learned how to size and pack the tomatoes. And we'd put them in a crate and put the cardboard on, and then put the second layer, and we hammered the little lug slats. And we also learned how to paste these labels onto the sides of the boxes. Yeah. And it was a fun time. I mean, there were 9 acres of vegetables across the street, and then there was the freeway. My father brought home fresh vegetables every night. I mean, we always had fresh vegetables for dinner, so it was a wonderful time. 21st Street was nothing but relatives. The whole block was related, and even on the south side of Taylor, my father's 2 uncles, Joe and Pete, lived next door to one another. Edith lived around the corner on Taylor, and when 20th moved in, my mother's mother and father moved in over there.
Yep.
So it was all related. Your cousins were everywhere.
And
And all these guys lived nearby, you know. And so it was fun. Joanne asked me to talk a little bit about beanies. So I didn't know that much about beanies other than my dad's cousin Edith was there for decades. And many called her
right here,
Edie.
right, Jan? This is her
Yeah,
right here.
yeah. And so to learn more about beanies, I spoke with my cousin Richard Beanie, Edith's son, who's now 80 years old. And I also spoke with Dale Yoshihara because he became the next owner. So this is what I learned from them. According to Dale, as the local farm growers brainstormed to create a growers wholesale market on 7th and Taylor, the on-site restaurant and bar were always in the plans for the market, which opened in 1932. So those farmers were planning always to have this restaurant there. My great uncle Joe, like Joanne said, was a member of the first elected board of directors of the market. According to Dale, legend has it that the market investors or shareholders met in a board meeting room to pick who would manage the restaurant and bar, and Bimbo Parachi's name came up. So he was chosen to manage it, and I think what happened is like you were entitled to this operation and space, but you paid a little rent to the market for using it. So the restaurant was called Bimbo's, and Mr. Parachi managed or leased the property from the market for some time. It's not known exactly how long Mr. Parachi managed the San Jose restaurant and bar. Dale said years later, when they were going through things, he found in an attic up above a metal sign with the name Growers Market Restaurant and a neon sign saying nightly dancing found to happen there. Those were in the attic. He also found a matchbox cover, a matchbook cover with the name Bimbo's 337 on it because that was the Taylor Street address. And then for some reason, I don't know the details, Mr. Parachi left the Taylor Street address and opened a restaurant bar in San Francisco named Bimbo's 365 Club. A little racy.
He was around for a long time.
He was around for a long time?
The restaurant was in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Well, the nightclub is still there.
Right,
Yeah.
the nightclub's still
The
there,
night
you're
that, yeah, I
right,
was gonna say, yeah.
So the exact year that the name changed to Beanies also isn't known, but I read online that in the 1930s, Abe Beanie the grandson of Cesare Bini, who once worked for the Paracci family, that he was working in the bar and restaurant. So perhaps Abe was working initially with Mr. Paracci. And maybe their family had become friends over time through the connection with the grandpa working for the Paraccis, and that grandpa was a vegetable peddler that went to the neighborhoods. In 1938, Abe Bini married my grandfather's niece, Edith, whose mother was a Marianelli, and I think perhaps at this time my uncle Pete Marianelli helped to finance and manage the bar and grill with Abe. And they called it Bini's Bar and Grill. That was the name. On Christmas Eve Day, 1945, which was Abe's birthday, he was a pilot and he went out for a joyride to celebrate his birthday, but it crashed on Brokaw and he died. And it left Edith, a widow with a 4-year-old son. So Pete Marianelli and Edith continued to operate Bini's Bar and Grill. And then some years later, Edith married Doug Williams, and the two of them together worked and operated Bini's. Edith managed the restaurant side, was a waitress, and he was a bookkeeper for both sides, the bar and the restaurant. Doug oversaw the bar operations and cooked on Saturdays. Bini's was open Monday to Saturday and closed on Sundays. The restaurant hours were 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. They served American and Italian foods. In addition to the regular menu, Edith had a chalkboard menu on which she added the daily specials. She served food to many cannery workers from Continental Can, Del Monte Cannery, truckers, farmers, policemen, detectives, lawyers, and even San Jose mayors.
Yeah.
The policemen loved going there. And some of them even, when they weren't working, they rented out her restaurant side and had parties there. And Dick said his mother always cooked free pasta for all of them. He said the money was made on the bar. The bar hours were 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. They had shifts of bar, people to work the bar. Dale said usually the owner, though, opened and closed. He said they served, Bini's early on served hard liquor and beer, and over time, wine. The Cribari family were friends of Edith and Doug's, so they served Cribari brand Burgundy, Chablis, and Rosé wines poured from a box. On Friday nights, the bar could be 3 deep, and my cousin Richard, who was in the seminary for a few years and left in his late 20s, he was working there to earn a little money, and his father, his stepdad, whom he called Dad, Doug, his name's Doug, said to him, "Hey, buddy, you gotta hurry it up," because it was like 3 deep with all these patrons. Over time, there were pinball machines in the bar and a jukebox in the bar. Richard Bini likened Bini's bar to a Cheers bar, but in the Santa Clara Valley of Heart's Delight.
True.
He said their customers represented the diversity and many ethnicities of America. Many of Bini's customers ran a tab and paid it off at the end of the month.
I think my dad did.
Right, I did.
Customers,
Sure, my dad did.
customers knew one another. After decades of operating Bini's and being free and clear of all debts, the customers paid off their debts every month.
Yeah, every month.
Oh, yeah, then it was.
Well, Edith,
Yeah.
she was a sweetheart.
Yeah.
She made sure you had, the food they used to serve, you could never.
You got a
get
ton of
anywhere.
it.
Yeah, you couldn't eat it all.
Yeah,
And she was always good with the young kids.
yeah.
We'd come in and,
There was one
I
little
remember
home-
sitting at the bar and having Shirley Temple. I
Yeah.
remember.
yeah.
So over time in the 70s, Edith developed cancer, and she and her husband Doug talked about the bar, and they decided to sell their rights to Bini's bar to the Yoshihara family in 1978. And as Dale told me, Yoshihara, when they came in to carry on Bini's, they created a new alphabetical file box, little cardboard thing with the customer's first and last names. That's all they had on it. It was used for bar tabs. or even to loan customers money. They would then sign a piece of paper, date their name, and the customers paid off their bill each month. No credit cards were ever used, as was the case when Doug and Edith were in charge. Dale believed that Beanie's had more character than a Cheers bar. He said he described it as a melting pot characterized by all classes of people. Blue collar, white collar, no collar. Hard hat, baseball cap, no hat. Everybody, he said, rubbed elbows with one another. It was an engaging atmosphere. The Yoshiharas operated Beanie's at that Taylor site for 20 years until 1998 when the market property was sold. At that time, the Yoshiharas moved Beanie's to a 6th Street location in San Jose's Japantown, kind of south of Taylor and on the west side of 6th Street. They were unable to have a liquor license at this 6th Street site though, but they had plans for building Beanie's and moving it to another location where they could have the full bar and restaurant. And they went forward for plans with that, but then over time he realized that this was not going to work out. He called Edith, Dale called Edith, to ask her permission to close Beanie's in 2001. Edith gave him her blessing and thanked him for the additional 23 years that the Yoshihara family kept Beanie's going. Dale Yoshihara went on to open Kyoto Palace in Campbell, Premier Shopping Center. Many of us go there to support him. Through the decades, Beanie's Bar and Grill became a legend in its own right. Blessed with owners and customers who created so many memories together, enjoyed good times and great food. Thank you all.
You know, when you would go to Beanie's, it depends on when you go there.
Okay.
Because I would go after work, you'd see the policemen.
Yeah.
I never was there in the morning, but I would drive by and there were pickup trucks and
Good job.
cars.
Thank you.
So I'm assuming it was the produce people.
Well,
Yeah.
It was like a strata.
It was packed, even in the
And
morning.
even lunch, forget it. You never get out in an
But
hour.
the food was tremendous.
In the morning, the bar was packed because all the Italians were in there. We were.
My dad was having
coffee
coffee royal.
Coffee
Yeah,
royals.
my dad
Coffee,
was
that
drinking.
was the drink in there, was coffee roll.
Yeah,
Everybody
that's
had
what my dad
coffee.
had. So, I guess we saved the best for last, the
Yeah.
Moreali family, Sharon and Tony.
Yeah,
And
we're
I
gonna
think
let Tony
Sharon's
go over
gonna let
Well,
Tony,
it's hard for me to stand because.
no, that's
my knees,
okay,
but,
Tony, don't worry.
uh,
Tell your story.
My stories are with their families. I mean, basically, I grew up with her father when I was little. I took over my dad's produce business, and I would buy everything from them or whatever came in from Marianelli's.
Well, why
But-
don't you talk about how Dad started,
Well-
and then you, and then
Yeah,
you.
the way my dad started produce was, his father was a cherry grower. So,
Whom we just found out today started when they
yeah,
came
which
from
I found
Italy
out today,
with
it started
Janice,
out
That's
with
my
with
dad.
Janice's family.
Janice's family.
Do you wanna pass it around so everybody
Yeah.
can see this picture of Tony?
They saw it,
and
but
my dad?
that would.
Did everybody see it?
Yeah.
My father was a wholesale,
This is my dad.
so whenever they grew, or he, Andrew grew, came into the market, either my dad would sell for them, or, one of the other companies would offload their produce. But my memories and with my dad, he was a mushroom distributor, he grew, was one of the largest mushroom distributors in San Jose at one time. But his produce
He
career was,
started Central
yeah,
Produce.
Central Produce, which was a Marion's later on. And, but, that's all I can remember with my dad. I mean, I was constantly in the produce market. But my memories, like with her father, when I took over and my dad retired, were unbelievable. It makes me sad to think that he's gone and your dad's gone, and they were great people, and my dad. But her father and her father, they all grew probably some of the best vegetables you ever saw in your life. They were beautiful, not like what you see in the store today, even. You know, bell peppers were bell peppers. They were thick wall bell peppers. They were commercial grade.
And a tomato tasted
Tomato
like a
tasted like a
tomato,
tomato.
a homegrown tomato.
But Andrew and I go back with him because as the market started to grow smaller and smaller and people were moving out, I was still one of the last that stayed. And my produce market, my company was there. So as her father was coming in and the market was dwindling, they had no clue that it was leaving. They just believed that if they grew and brought it, somebody was going to come and buy it. Well, that wasn't happening anymore because Nob Hill and all the big companies had taken these companies away from them. So I would buy whatever they grew because it was the best. So my memories with them are the things we did, the funny things in the market. I mean, it's like I said, it was a city to be there. You know, it was a city growing up. Everything that happened there, everybody knew your business and what was going on in your life. There was no getting away from it. If you did something wrong, everybody knew you did something wrong. You know, it's like I joke about it, but until I was a certain age, I didn't know my name was anything other than SB because I was called that from, hey, get over here, what are you doing? You know, it was just a real life experience.
Your
the
dad
produce market.
had the co-op markets.
Yes.
He used to tell me. Nobody could else get in there.
No.
Everybody's trying to get in there. San Francisco market, open market. The only guy that had it was Tony.
And Andrew, stories about her father, because your dad wasn't really in the market all the time. He was growing, bringing in. And there was another gentleman, Nicora, who grew artichoke stuff. And Cardoni, he was one of the best Cardoni growers around, but he was always in the market. But her dad was always walking around to see what was going on, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were mornings my father would blow his lock off the door. You know, Andrew, I lost the key, and he'd tell my dad would come over with a cherry bomb or something. They'd blow the door off. And as a joke to you, they used to tie his truck up with a chain. Yes, these are true stories. They would tie her dad's truck up with a chain around a pole, and when he would get in it to go, it wouldn't go. And then they come over and and I used to get so upset at them for, you know, but he loved it. And then as
He loved the market, that was his
as
first
they
love.
left, her father would come to see me every morning, and he would come into my,
Oh, sweet, that's okay.
He thought a lot of you too, Tony.
yeah, he would come in every morning in my shop, and he would try and steal something. He was very good at it, and I would watch him steal it. And he would go out, you know, he'd go out.
Well, he always had
But,
his hands
yeah,
behind his
always
back.
walked with it. He had a hole in his pants.
All the time. My
from
mother
walking
was
around.
always patching his
Yeah.
pants because of this hole. My dad was just constantly with those
He
hands
was,
behind his back.
he was the most lovable guy you could, you know, when he was, I'm sure with you guys, I don't know how, but he was so lovable as he got older, you know, and he was just so, he was a big part of my life growing up. But,
Thank
Great
you, Tony.
memories, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But I also want to say when my dad was dying of cancer, Tony visited my dad. And it really meant a lot, and I thank you for
I
doing
brought
that,
him
Tony.
pears.
Thank you, Tony.
Oh, he was a great guy.
Well, I think that's why
So,
these stories kind of document why this whole part of history,
Oh,
it's lost.
it is lost.
I mean, this YouTube, I mean, the we're videoing now will be at least the foundation of a record, but we need to get this
Yeah.
memorialized.
I mean, our weekend nights where I can remember, we were at the Marianellis.
Yeah.
I mean, my parents would play cards with them, and Sharon and I would be at the Marianellis, and we could walk home. And in those days, you didn't have to worry about anything. You could walk anywhere, nobody would bother you. 7th and Taylor and Japantown was the most safest place
I
in the
think
city.
it still is.
It still
But I
is.
think it's still is.
I could leave my shop open, my produce company, unlocked all night, and nothing would ever be touched. It was that safe. Nothing happened bad around that market.
And one thing I remember is my dad going to work at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning
the time
and
they
not
went.
coming home till late at night.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well,
if we wanted to see, if I wanted to
You
see
went
my
to the
dad,
produce
we had to
market.
go to the market.
Yeah.
And
About
if we
4
were
in the morning,
tired,
4
we
o'clock.
laid on a sack of potatoes. They were big sacks, or onions, or
Onions,
whatever.
potato. And
But-
you know, there were so many people involved in this valley that, you know, there should be some history on all of them. Because, you know, the Marianellis, the Ghigeris, all these farmers, Panettone, all it's, yeah, it's unbelievable,
And
but
we all lived in the same neighborhood, I mean,
Yeah.
except
I mean,
for
and-
Joanne because her
they don't talk about
branch
the
was.
Japanese farmers,
But we all
but
lived
they were
together.
Right,
huge.
right. Our-
We
You
did.
know.
We were what was considered South
Right.
Yeah,
Side.
and
You were
there
by
was
the market.
Nani
Right.
Matsu was out off of, he's where now Cisco is. And I remember going out to the ranch to get romaine from them, and they would load our truck, and at that time, they would come in big
About the market.
wooden
What
crates.
were your part- I
And
just
then,
thought you would say that.
when he passed away, I mean,
What
the
were
kids couldn't
kind of
wait to
driving
get rid of
forces
that
in
property. He was worth
I'll let you talk
millions,
over
you
here.
know?
Joanne mentioned something here. I didn't know that she had these. I went up to the old produce market in San Francisco. And, you know, really, the Italian-American truck farmers and farmers were really big in the produce industry in Northern California. This is a monument to the old produce market there. And then in J-Town now, they have these markers. If you take a walk,
There you go.
you see, this is a bunch of them. Now, would be nice to get a marker like this for the produce market. I mean, we have enough information. Look here, they have an explanation and they have only 4 pictures. So maybe you pick, maybe 5 or 6, who cares? But you gotta pick the most symbolic and then a simple write-up. And this could, it's not, you know,
Is that something the city council's gotta put their blessing on, or?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
they have a, I'll tell you this, they have a city monument department. Now, I tried calling them, all pre-pandemic. You know, during the pandemic, the place melts down, but there's no reason why we can't resurrect
Well,
this.
you know, the tough part is to see. the
This is
Jap-
not hard.
Well, it's not, but see, you know, the difference between like the Asian, Japanese farmers and people like, this is very honorable to them. For some reason, the American people, and I don't mean to sound, but we don't honor things as much as other races for some reason. You know, it's terrible. Our kids grow up and
This history is lost.
it's lost.
But we need
Where-
to have something to remember that corner.
Yes, and our kids need to have something to remember that by. When you tell your kids today what you did then, they look at you and go, really? Yeah,
Yes.
we really did that, you know?
But these markers are there,
Yeah.
and I think they can add one more.
Well, San Jose is full of places and a lot of history that they don't mark up.
Exactly.
Just like the laundry works and the, you know, all these things that are really here in San Jose that, and I
Thank you
mean,
for reminding me.
I have to say, I mean, it was a big Italian town. This is, when we were growing up, I don't think there were that many Portuguese to the
Santa
Italians.
Clara,
Santa
Portuguese.
Clara,
Santa Clara.
but San Jose was
Yeah.
really big in Italian. And
Well,
you know,
apropos,
it was.
In the beginning, the
Yeah.
masses at Holy Cross
Were-
Church
yeah,
were all in
remember, all in
Italian.
Italian.
Yeah. Now they have one
we
mass.
have this flyer here.
Oh,
I bring this out during the festa,
Oh, Goose Town.
Goosetown.
but there were really 3 Italian-American communities,
Yeah.
and they were all related to parish churches.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay, so Holy Cross,
right.
um,
Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart, Holy Cross, and Holy Family.
Right.
Holy Family got torn down because of the freeway, And that's where Little Italy
We
is.
were Sacred Heart. That's-
Yeah, Sacred Heart. I have
went to
three.
school there.
I have three posters in the back there of the stained glasses of Sacred Heart.
But isn't,
96% are major Italian families.
Yeah.
but isn't Little Italy is really 13th Street over there by Bethesda Park?
That's the other. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
That's
That's
Holy
Little Italy.
Cross.
Not where we have it. It's
Well,
really
but
not.
no, that was a Little
That was
Italy.
Holy
It was
Family.
torn down with the freeway.
Yeah, it was.
Right,
That's-
but I mean, that really was
But that hotel
Little
was,
Italy.
Well, that was the Holy Cross neighborhood.
right.
The Holy Family neighborhood is over here. That was the powerhouse. That was the muscle. That's where North 17th, North blah, blah, blah. All of that area is number one and number two. Number one is downtown, and number three was the migration to Sacred Heart.
And it's really funny how we determined where East San Jose is. Everybody says East San Jose is Story and there. No, East San Jose was where we really grew up, was East San
Yeah.
Jose. They moved it out because that's where the bad went. So they said, this is East San Jose now.
Well, it even gets ludicrous.
Yeah.
Tell me a real definition of Willow Glen. I mean, you will have everybody wants to be part of that.
Well, you have to have a zip code of 95125. That's Willow Glen.
And of course, but see, Goosetown ran that whole area,
Well, I find it
and
really
nobody wants to say
interesting,
they're from Goosetown.
you know, because everybody, people that, a lot of people that migrated here from other states, like if you're out, when I was in the produce business and I would go into a restaurant and sit down and listen to them talk about, oh, how terrible San Jose is. And I would say, where are you from? And they would give me, well, then you should go back to where you were, because that's why San Jose is not like it is anymore, because you moved in. You want it to be your way. And, you know, hey, I'm telling you, San Jose, it has a great reputation. I mean, it really does. Everybody knew everybody in this town. You couldn't get away with anything. If you got in trouble with a fire department, I can remember, or a nun or whatever, your father knew about it. You got a ticket, your father got a call. Hey, I got the ticket here that your son got. And you go home thinking you're not going to get in trouble, and he'd say, what did you do today? Not a thing, Dad. He goes, did you get a ticket? How'd you know?
Dan?
Beanie's was more American Italian.
Yeah, you could get a hot dog, you could get a plate of pasta, you could get chicken, you could get a grilled cheese.
Can I get a round of applause for everybody?